I started off fascinated by communications as a young kid. I got an amateur radio license when I was about 11 years old and was building Heath kits from Benton Harbor, Michigan, to help with that hobby. I was fascinated with the electronics of communications and wiring of equipment and so forth. I think in much the same way that young people are today with the internet. But as you say, it was a very different time and we didn't have an internet. But I had the ability to communicate with people by Morse code behind the Iron Curtain in the 1960s when there was no communication with people over there, and it was a remarkable experience. And providing a telephone service to people in Antarctica at the Byrd Naval Air Station during a time when they couldn't communicate. And I was fascinated by the ability to do that sort of thing. Well, when I went to the Federal Communications Commission, it was a direct link to all of those interests, and there I was at a major government agency helping to regulate the broadcasting industry, and was involved in some interesting litigation, one of which was the George Carlin 7 Dirty Words case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Which is still a problem area 3 or 4 decades later. Nobody can quite define what indecency is. I know it's out there, but nobody can put parameters on it. That was a very interesting thing to be involved in. The Communications Act has a prohibition against obscene, indecent, and profane speech, which had been there since 1934, but other than obscenity, which is defined by the Supreme Court, there was no good definition for indecency. And we tried very hard to come up with a definition in 1975 and 76 and weren't very successful, and it's still a problem even today. The most recent chairman was approached many times about relaxing the rules and regulations that apply to the broadcasting industry, and he didn't do anything in that regard. The current chairman, Ajit Pai, who came in with a new administration in the 3rd week of January, is taking a very different view, and he's likely to roll back a good many of the regulations that have been problems for broadcasters and are vestiges of the past, one of which is a 1974 rule which prevents a television station and a newspaper in the same community from being commonly owned. Yeah. There's no rationale for that I can think of anymore, but it's still on the books. Over-the-air broadcasting is still very important in rural parts of the country where there isn't any cable. Satellite communication is generally available, but a lot of people still use over-the-air television. Public television is very reliant upon over-the-air, and the public television serves minority and less wealthy people to a large degree, and it's important for all those reasons. Yeah. The other thing that is going to happen in the next generation of television is there's a new broadcasting standard that the FCC is about to put forth in the next few months called ATSC 3.0, which is compatible with tablets and smartphones so that televised video over the air will be easily received by those devices, and that's another way that broadcasting is going to maintain its relevance to the current market. I lived in Washington for more than 40 years now, and life on the Eastern Shore is very high quality compared to what I do over there. We came here initially by water. We had sailboats on the Western Shore for 30-some years. My wife and I would frequently go to Annapolis or Galesville where the boats were kept, and we'd sail to St. Michael's, we'd sail to Cambridge, we'd sail to Oxford, we'd anchor around the Knapp's Narrows area and Dunn Cove and places like that. And finally my wife said, why don't we put the boat over there rather than sailing 4 to 5, 6 hours to get there every weekend? I thought it was a terrible idea. She prevailed upon me, and we moved the boat to Bachelor's Point, where it was located for, I think, 10 or 12 years. Then the boat stopped leaving the slip as frequently as it had been before. We became active in land-based sorts of things, and she suggested again that a move was appropriate in our life, and this time it ought to be to some real estate that wasn't floating to, and then decided we wanted property on the water, which we did in 2007. We spend a lot of our time here now. I think this is a remarkable community. The cultural opportunities for a community this small are truly outstanding. The civic organizations that are here are full of very high quality, decent people trying to make a difference here. There is every outdoor activity imaginable in the county. It suits all of the interests that I have, and life is very pleasant here. The Caddy Me Art Museum was the first one, and
is that right?
yes, that came about because a very good friend of ours now, Frank Kittredge, and his wife Joan, we bought their home on Shipshead Creek, and I asked Frank what he would suggest to us coming to town. How could we get involved in the community and have a meaningful experience and do some good? And he said, why don't you try one of several organizations. The first one he mentioned was the Caddy Me Art Museum. And he was helpful in mentoring my involvement with that organization, and ultimately became chairman there and served a 6-year term on the board, and now emeritus trustee there. And Ben Simons, who's just taken the helm there, is an outstanding person with a perfect background and the right disposition and the proper set of skills to cause all of that. And Anke von Wagenberg, the senior curator, is equally as good, and the sky is the limit for those two, and I'm very excited about the future of the Art Museum.
You were on the Chesapeake Bay Maritime.
Yes.
Are you still?
I became involved there 7 or 8 years ago. Been active on the board, and currently the co-chair of the capital campaign there, and was the chairman of the presidential search committee that brought the current president to the organization. And I am so proud of what Kristen Greenaway has done. She's a remarkable human being that has energized the place and come up with an untold number of new initiatives that I think have been very well received in the community, and I have the highest hopes for the future of CBMM also. Yes, the YMCA, I think, does and has the potential to continue doing more good for the quality of life in this county and the shore generally than almost any organization. The Y currently has 26,000 members up and down the shore, from Chincoteague in the south up to Centerville in Queen Anne's County. The heart of it is Easton St. Michael's. But it has very fine, enlightened professional leadership, and fortunately Robbie and his staff not only have a vision, but they have the skills to create the resources necessary to accomplish the vision. The most recent significant development there was the acquisition of the Cross Courts Athletic Club on Washington Street, which is now a Y facility as of the end of December of last year, and it will be changed in some ways to be more like a YMCA facility. There will be summer camp activity undercover when the weather is bad there. There will be senior wellness activities that are currently at the Peach Blossom Y that will be relocated to Washington Street. There are new activities like pickleball are being played in there. There were 40 or 50 people learning how to play last Friday night. It'll be a great facility, and part of it is overflow from the downtown Y. But
what takeaways do you have in terms of what makes a successful organization?
Several things. The first is a mission that's really meaningful for the community. And the second is enlightened, capable senior professional leadership in the organization who not only believe in that mission but can communicate it very effectively to the community, and in turn have the ability to raise the resources necessary to make an organization grow and prosper. And we're extremely fortunate in Talbot County to have a number of organizations that have all of those components. I think the most serious problems that charities can have is if they select the wrong person to be the professional head, and he doesn't fit with the board, he or she doesn't fit with the board and the community, and particularly when someone doesn't have the ability to raise the resources and the funds necessary to make the organization go. The second is some organizations take on too many activities all at the same time and spread themselves too thin. make a mistake and have a problem. Sometimes that involves the acquisition of long-term debt, which can prove to be a very large stumbling block to organizations. Once you've incurred debt, you can't raise money to satisfy it. That just doesn't work. You have to pay it out, and that can be a real problem with a downturn in the economy.